Hi there, welcome to 90% Knitting. This is episode 303 and I'm Lisa, also known as Fibernymph. I will be putting a timestamp menu down below in the drop down on YouTube and in the show notes on the Fibernymph Dye Works board on Ravelry in the episode 303 thread. There will be a timestamp menu as well as show notes. I apologize, I did not get show notes for episode 302 up. It seems like if I don't get them up the same day as I post everything, despite my best intentions, they often don't get up. So I will make an effort to get them up today or tomorrow, whenever I manage to get this processed and uploaded. I wanted to ask you though, if you watch on YouTube, would it be more helpful to you if I included full show notes in the drop down below the video, rather than just putting them on the Ravelry group page? I can do that. I don't know if I'll be able to link everything, but at least you would have the written version of the notes to refer to if that would be helpful to you. I've never done it that way before, but I'm willing to give it a try if enough of you say that you think it would be helpful. So let me know in the comments or on the Ravelry group, whichever you prefer. Okay. I'm drinking some coffee today, and yes, I still have my Christmas mugs out. Haven't put them away yet. I think they're the last vestige of the holiday stuff that has not been put away in my house. Well, my outdoor wreaths are still up because I just haven't had a chance to go out. The weather hasn't been fabulous for that. We have a lot of, well, not a lot. We have snow on the ground right now, which you can see out my window. We got, I would say, maybe 3 or 4 inches over the past week. Not all at one time, so it was never really enough to do much with. I did take myself snowshoeing on Monday though, because I was bound and determined to not let another winter pass without getting to go out and enjoy some snowshoeing. There's a little state park not too far from me. That's usually where I go because there's a small lake and there's a path around the lake, and it only takes me like a half hour to do the loop. Matter of fact, I probably could do it twice and, you know, it wouldn't take me very long. I did it once because it was my first time out, and, you know, and I also wasn't feeling good. That was the other thing. This week was noted by illness. Thankfully, not the knockdown kind of flu that I know a lot of people are dealing with, but last weekend I finally succumbed to a urinary tract infection. Sorry if that's TMI, that I had sort of been flirting with all week and trying to ward off with lots and lots of water, as I had mentioned to you before, that I was drinking a lot of water, just in general. But that was actually one of my thoughts, was that's, you know, good for your urinary system. That and, you know, taking cranberry tablets and things like that. And unfortunately, even though that works for me sometimes, it did not this time, so I ended up on an antibiotic last weekend, which did kick it, thankfully, because that's never fun. If you've ever had one, you know, they're not fun. However, in the midst of taking the antibiotic for that, I also ended up with a raging sinus infection. I woke up Sunday morning last weekend. It was just like my whole head was felt like it was going to explode. So I was dealing with that a lot this week. So it's been that kind of a week. Obviously it did not keep me inside on Monday when I went out snowshoeing. I always feel like the fresh air is sort of good for you. You know, cleans out all those germs that are just lingering around you in the winter when you can't open windows and stuff. But anyway, this week was not a great week for feeling good. I was very low energy and very tired, and anytime I get like that, it also like makes me super emotional, and just everything is more, you know what I mean? I'm sure you guys know what I mean, because I know you're not alone. I remember a blog post from the Yarn Harlot, Stephanie Pearl McPhee, many years ago. I remember reading this, where she was saying how every once in a while, you know, her family, who she knows just loves her and they are, you know, so close. She says all of a sudden it'll just be like everybody hates me and nobody loves me and nobody cares about me. And she said, and then like, you know, a day or two later she comes down with some horrible cold, and she made that connection because it had happened enough times that, you know, it always is preceded by those feelings of I'm all alone and nobody cares, and then she gets sick. And I think that's kind of universal because, you know, when you get sick, it's not just a physical thing. It does affect your whole being. And it was very much like that for me this week. I just, ugh. Thankfully, I feel like I am on the upswing of everything. I was very sneezy and congested this morning, though, so I don't know if that's going to go away or not. Hopefully it won't turn into anything worse, though. I'm trying to take care of myself and eat healthily, and I'm still drinking my water, although not as much. Oh my gosh, after a few days of that and getting up like 5 times at night, that was enough. I couldn't do that. I needed sleep. Sleep's important for your health too, right? So, anyway, I hope you had a good week. How was it? Share it with me. Let me know. I know everybody's going through a lot of something right now. It seems like that's been very evident across social media and in things that I've been hearing from people. And speaking of social media, I just wanted to address the conversation that has been going on Instagram, I would say probably for the last week and a half now, maybe even a little longer, that a lot of you may already be aware of if you're on Instagram. And if you're not, maybe you've heard about it through other means. The conversation about race and racism and the knitting community or the fiber arts community in general. What I really want to say is that this community around the 90% Knitting podcast and the Fibernymph Dye Works group, I hope it will always be seen as very open and very inclusive, because that is always what I've intended it to be. I have never intended it to be anything else. I don't run my personal life that way. I certainly would not run my my knitting community life that way, or my business that way either. I hope everyone feels welcome here, and yeah, I will do whatever I can in my power to make sure it remains that way, because we all have a place here, and I hope everyone feels that way. I just want everybody to feel welcome and wanted here, because you are. All right, let's move on now into the knitting part of the podcast, because I have got so much to share with you. I have been on a tear with finishing projects. I shared with you all those whips that I had late last year, and I am working my way through them. So let's start, and the very first one you can see because I am wearing it, and I am so excited about this. Let me take a sip. My arboreal cardigan is finished. I finished it yesterday, and it got to the point where it's like, okay, I am this close to being done. I am going to finish this thing now. And I did. I just sat and I finished it. Steeked and everything. So here it is. I'm going to try to stand up. This is going to be very awkward because I'm very close to the camera. But just so you can see, there's your color work. Well, there's my color work. And my button bands created after I steeked the cardigan. And here it is. And it comes right down to about hip level. I cannot say enough wonderful things about this sweater. I know I said when I finished my antler cardigan a year or so ago that it was my favorite sweater because it fit the best out of any sweater I'd ever made, and that was true at the time. I think this one takes its place. This is the best fitting sweater I have ever made. I wish I could take credit for it more than I can, because it took me a year and 6 days specifically, based on my dates and my Ravelry project page. A year and 6 days to make this. Lots of stops and starts in the middle there. And I know I didn't really follow the pattern. I would say the best thing I did with regard to this sweater, and what I try to do with all sweaters to make them fit well, is I try it on a lot as I'm going. And I did that with this sweater, and I think that is what helped. The point that I had left it languishing the longest was after the color work and after, putting the sleeve stitches on waist yarn and just working on the body. I feel like at that point I was thinking about doing some sort of waist shaping, but I didn't really do any waist shaping. I do believe I changed needle sizes though, because I knit the majority of the body of this sweater on US 5s. And I know that was not the size I was supposed to. At least I don't think I was. I did the color work on 7s, and I think I was supposed to go down to 6s for the body, or that was what I was originally going to do. And my hunch, what I did was I did do some of it on 6s and then realized I didn't want to do the waist shaping, so I went down to 5s, which made a very nice fabric. I'm very happy with it, and it gave it enough of a shape for my body shape. So in that respect, that's probably the best thing I did as far as making this fit me really well. But even like through the shoulders and everything, the color work, I have not blocked this. And you know what? I'm probably not going to be honest with you, because it fits really well. The color work is not super boinky, you know, the way sometimes it scrunches together. My tension on my color work was really good on this sweater, which I was very thankful for. And I just don't feel the need to soak it and block it at this point. Plus, I don't want to take it off. I'm really enjoying wearing it. Ever since I finished it, man, it's been on a lot. I will say it's super warm. Being a worsted weight stranded sweater, you've got that double layer of yarn up here. It's warm. I've only got a tank top on underneath it. Anyway, I would say the most notable thing about what I did on this sweater that I've never done before is how I steeked it. This is only my second steeked sweater. The first was my Hero cardigan that I did last year. That was made out of Letlopi, which is an Icelandic wool, very sticky. I did not bother to reinforce that at all. I just cut. This, however, is Cascade 220, which is also a wool. It's not superwash, so it's got grip to it. However, it's not as grippy as Icelandic. It's definitely, I wanted to do something to reinforce it. So I did spend a good bit of time watching some YouTube videos on different methods for reinforcing color work before steeking. And what I ended up doing was the crocheted steek method. So you're putting in 2 rows of crochet reinforcement, which I'd always heard of, but I had never quite understood what it was about. The Very Pink Knits tutorial video on YouTube, which I will link in the show notes, was what I basically ended up following to do this. Her videos are always so good, and it gave me all the information I needed to be able to do this. It is a sort of fiddly process until you get the hang of it. The second row of the reinforcement stitches did go in easier than the first, just because I had the first to kind of follow as a guide. Although I will say, well, no, that had nothing to do with steeking. Never mind, I was going to say something else. Anyway, I put those in and then I cut, and it's just a matter of cutting slowly, you know, very deliberate stitches, 1 or 2 little bars at a time between the 2 steek reinforcements. I actually put up a series of pictures on Instagram, on my personal Instagram account, which is Fibernymph, kind of showing pictures of the steps that I took and talking about them, what I did. So you might want to check those out if you want a little bit more info. But otherwise, I would highly recommend the Very Pink Knits YouTube video on doing a crochet reinforced steek. Then I picked up the stitches. At this point, like I said, I was not following the pattern anymore after I did the body, this upper part, the yoke, and then, you know, having the body. Once I got to the body, I just did my own thing, did the sleeves myself. The sleeves I had been holding on 16-inch needles anyway, so whenever I went to do each sleeve, the needle was already in there. I picked up, I think, 16 stitches in the underarm. I have no idea what the pattern said to do, but that seemed about right. And then I kept track of my decreases. I ended up doing decreases the entire way down the sleeve. I did have one setback on this sleeve. Do you remember when I put my arm in this last time I recorded and I said, oh, that seems really short, but it's really not? Well, actually it really was. And I was doing the ribbing. I was going to end up with like 4 inches of ribbing, which was ridiculous. Plus I had gone down 1 needle size too small for the ribbing. I'd gone down to 3s. I really only needed to go down to 4s. So I ended up ripping back up here to the last decrease. I did another, I think, 2 inches of sleeve, which included 2 more decreases at that point, and then I did the cuff in US 4 DPNs, which turned out to be perfect. And so then I just replicated it for the second sleeve because I was not doing them concurrently. Sometimes I do, but I did not do that this time. Anyway, it turned out wonderfully. I could probably continue talking about it for a really long time because it was such a rewarding project to do. The buttons I had in my stash. I had pulled out about 4 or 5 different sets of buttons trying to decide which ones I liked. And quite honestly, I have a lot of very plain wooden buttons in my stash because those tend to be what I like the most on my sweaters. And lo and behold, that's what I ended up using. I put 7 buttons in this. Again, I have no idea what the pattern said to do for that. I kind of made up my own buttonholes. I have put extensive notes in my project page for this sweater, so if you're interested, you can check that out. But I think I'm going to just stop talking about it now because I feel like I've been talking about it for a long time, both today and just in general. But it's done. I have a finished sweater. Oh, here, I will show you what my steek looks like on the inside. You know, once you cut it, the steek edges just roll in because it's like it's stockinette. It rolls in. And you can see this row. This was my crocheted reinforcement. This was my steek stitches up here in my yoke. Down below it was just blue. Anyway, it rolled in, and you know, then I had picked up the stitches for my button band, and so this was here. I didn't really have to do anything. You know, they say you can just kind of leave it. Those crochet stitches are going to keep it from unraveling. Plus, things don't tend to want to unravel sideways anyway. But what I was finding, because I had done 7 steek stitches, the steek area was a little wider than it probably really needed to be. I think next time I'll probably only do 5. But once I did the steek, this part wanted to continue to roll, and it was creating like a bump, like right along either side of the button bands. And that seemed weird to me, and I couldn't get it to lay down, and I didn't really know what to do with it. I didn't know if, you know, blocking might have helped that, but probably not, because stockinette just wants to roll in general. So I did go down, and I used my contrasting color, the aspen grayish color, and I just tacked down that steek edge the whole way down on both sides. And that's doing the job. I know I could have probably used like ribbon. I haven't figured out a really good way to do ribbon on the inside of a sweater that isn't really awkward. This was much easier. So I did that. I can still feel those edges because they're quite bulky, but they're not showing as much. And I feel like now I'm touching my chest a lot, so I'll stop doing that. But that was the only thing. I wasn't really too sure on what to do. I am thinking I could probably take like a hot iron and just steam it real well and kind of maybe press it, like not press with the iron, but steam it and then press with my fingers to maybe try to get it to relax and lay a little flatter. But honestly, the way it is right now, it feels fine. So I'm not super worried about that. But all in all, arboreal. It is finished. I can wear it. I'm very happy with it. And yeah, I love it. So let's move on. I finished a bunch of other things. The next thing that I finished was my mini maximization shawl, which is a pattern by Sarah Jordan. And the yarn is my Fibernymph Dye Works Bounce Base, which I dyed these kits specifically for this pattern release. And here it is. This makes use of 12 mini skeins. 6 of them were semi-solids, and then 6 of them were coordinating speckles, and they are alternated. And here it is in all its glory. I love this shawl. I have not gotten to take the pretty pictures of it yet. I'm hoping to do that soon. I actually kind of need my husband to help me with that, I think. But it's a nice size. I mean, it's definitely a big shawl, and I would probably be likely to wear it this way, like under a coat or, you know, whatever. It's going to keep your neck warm. And it's just nice, and it's squishy because it's just all that, you know, not ribbing, garter. So yeah, here it is. I love it. I did mention that I will have more of this color combination on Bounce in the shop, hopefully before the end of the month. I haven't gotten to dye them up yet though. But there are some in Bedazzled, and then there's the Autumn mini colorway set too, which is the warmer colors. They're in there. So I don't think there's much else for me to say about this right now, because I've talked about it a lot in past episodes, but it turned out really wonderfully. I never got bored with it because it's just like self-striping yarns, kind of how the stripes keep you going. Switching back and forth between those semi-solids and the speckles every 2 rows, even though the rows got very, very long, it just kept it really interesting and fun, and I'm super happy to have this finished. So that, again, is the Mini Maximization Shawl Pattern by Sarah Jordan. Okay, the next thing I finished is a project that I showed you that I cast on last time, and this is my sockhead cowl. I whizzed through this. This was just so much fun to knit. I cast this on for my entry into the January Slay the Stash in the Down Cellar Studio podcast group. I used all but I think maybe 20 inches of the yarn, so that was successful. This is my hand spun. It was some Hiwassee Creek Dye Works yarn or fiber that I spun up. I don't believe she's dyeing anymore, but I just love these colors, and it was so nice. And I actually wore this the morning that I went snowshoeing. I put it on. I think I may end up like soaking it and then tossing it, or maybe I won't even soak it. Maybe I'll just spritz it, get it damp, and toss it in the dryer, because as I wore it, it did want to just kind of stretch out and fall down on me a little bit. So I don't really want to fool it completely, but I would like it to be a little bit more snug. So I may do that at some point, but honestly, it's not that big of a deal. But it is super soft and cuddly, and I love it. So I'm glad I got that done too. Okay, another thing I finished were the trapezoid socks. This is another Sarah Jordan pattern, trapezoid. And again, I had dyed up the yarn for the kits that are in my shop currently. I love them. They're fun. Little shorty socks. I switched up the colors, which if you do get a kit of this, you'll want to get 2 full skeins in order to do the switching up. I think maybe the smallest size you might be able to get away with half skeins, but I wouldn't risk it. I would go with the whole skeins, seriously. I love having the reversed colors on these. If you just want to do the same main color for both socks, you could do a full skein for the main color and just a half skein for your contrast color. But if you want to be cool like me, get 2 full skeins. Anyway, this is done out of my Traveler Sport Weight base. My colors were soft black and aqua shock blue. And yeah, I've talked about these before too, so I don't really know that I have a whole lot more to say. They're a very easy color work pattern. If you're new to color work or you've never done color work in a sock, this might be a really good place to start, because it is a slightly heavier weight yarn than fingering weight to do coloring work with. They're just so cleverly designed. I've talked about this before. She's got this little nubbin up here, garter stitch, and I just love the little details, that contrast there, the contrast in the heel turn. It's just super fun. So yeah, another finished object. I know, so many finished objects. What else? I actually have one more finished object. I can't show you because I don't have it anymore, but I'll pop a picture of it in here. And that was my repurposed whip hat. You might remember from when I was going through my whips that I had that balaclava that I was trying to knit for my son, and I got hosed up on the pattern and let it sit for a couple of years because it was supposed to be a Christmas gift like 2 Christmases ago. And so I had decided I was going to rip it out, but then as I went to rip it out, I'm like, this is like 5 inches of ribbing. Why am I not just continuing this and making it into a hat? So that's what I ended up doing, obviously. I finished that up pretty quickly, and I gave it to him whenever we had dinner this past Wednesday, and he loved it. He put it on right away, so way to go. To be knit-worthy. Wear that hat, and he wore it all through dinner. So, that was knit out of Katia Azteca yarn, which is a nice... It's a superwash. It's a bulky weight. That's actually... I think it's bulky. I'm not actually sure if it's classified as bulky or worsted or maybe an Aran, it might be an Aran weight, I don't know. It's a heavier weight yarn, but it's lovely, and that's actually what I made his Afghan out of several years ago, and it was like a leftover ball and a half that I had, so I'm happy to have that off the needles. So that is another finished object. So, you know, I told you I was keeping track of my finished objects, and as I was posting things on Instagram, Maria, who is a Seductive Berry, she had the idea that I should be keeping track of these, like a spreadsheet or something, and so that's what I did. Maria, this is for you. Here's my spreadsheet. So I basically have a spreadsheet going where I've got all of my works in progress prior to 2019. So these are all socks, and then I've got shawls, and then I've got sweaters, and I've got Afghans, and then I just had some random things. This one was that hat that I just finished, and I think there was one more line. Oh yeah, those mitts, those sweet fern mitts are up here. So as I finish them, I'm highlighting the lines in purple and putting the date that I finished them and the yardage that I'm using. And then I do have a section here on the second page for anything that I've cast on this year. And then as I finish them, I'm highlighting them in blue. And then I'm keeping a running total of my yards finished for this year, which I'm up to 2,978. That's pretty darned awesome for less than 1 month. The red line here, this indicates that I've decided to frog something. And the item that I decided to frog was the not striped or faded sweater that I had started last summer out of the that deep purple frangipani yarn. I decided that that yarn would so much be better served being used for like a cabled or lace or somehow otherwise textured sweater rather than just a plain stockinette sweater, which was what I was going to end up doing with it. So that one has been frogged. It's gone, and I'm fine with that. I may actually end up frogging the raspberry campfire cardi too that I was doing out of the Elspeth Lavold silky wool. I'm thinking about it. I don't know. I love the silky wool. I just don't know if I want another sweater out of it. I've done sweaters out of it before. Sometimes, I don't know, it's just so lightweight. It's such a lightweight wool. Even though it's a DK weight, the blend of fibers that are in it makes it very light on my body, and I just always sort of feel like I'm not really wearing a cardigan, and yet, or a sweater, and yet that would seem nice, except then wearing it in warmer weather when you feel like, oh, well, that would be a good time to wear something that feels lightweight. It's still very warm because there's wool in it. So as much as I love that yarn, and I think it might be really great for shawls, I might end up using this stuff that I have left for some shawl projects. I'm just not sure about that particular project. Plus, it's super nubby because it's tweedy kind of. And I'm not sure how I'm going to like that with all the eyelet detail in that campfire cardi. So I'm thinking about ditching that and starting and using that for something else. So we'll see if I end up with another red line on here or not. But here's my spreadsheet, Maria. I love having spreadsheets and things to keep track of. I use, and I know I've mentioned this before, I think it's called, what's it called? Knit Meter? Here, wait, let me look. I've got my laptop down here. Yeah, Knit Meter. It's a website you can go to. I'll try to remember to link it in the show notes. And you can put in your information and keep track of all of your projects, and it'll keep a running total. You've probably seen those little boxes people put, like maybe on their Instagram profile pages or blogs or whatever, saying, you have knit this much per this year or whatever. I love having those. I've used that for years. So having the yardage also on the spreadsheet is a little redundant, but I don't care. It's like, it's very encouraging to me. Like that drives me. It's a motivator, being able to put that kind of stuff in there. Sort of like being able to use that bar on Ravelry on your project pages where you like can increase your percentage of doneness per project. I love doing that. I'm motivated by things like that. Alrighty, let's see. I think that's all the finished objects, which it should be because that was a lot. But I have worked on some other things. I didn't bring it in here, darn it. I will try to insert a picture, although it doesn't really look much different, so maybe I won't. My Hedge Witch shawl, which I'm making out of my yarn, my new Ridgetop DK, which is the non-superwash. I'm up to 8 out of the 13 repeats of the chart. It's slow going, although I have finally cracked the code. Like, I'm able to do it now without looking at the directions, so that's good. That was the knit along that's going on in the Fiber Trek and the Gentle Knitter podcast groups. It was started during the full moon in December to the full moon this month, which is tomorrow. Mine will definitely not be done for that, but I've really enjoyed seeing the ones that have been done, and I look forward to getting mine finished at some point. But honestly, my knitting time really went into this sweater and some other projects. Those were more my priorities. So I won't worry about showing it to you this week. Once I actually make some progress on it, maybe when I get to like one of the garter ridges on it or something, the garter sections, then I'll show it to you again, because it'll be more exciting than seeing the same thing over and over and over. Likewise, I have worked on a couple of pair of socks. After finishing those shorty socks, I pulled out another sock project that I started working on here in the house. I think I told you about that. I was having that down in my studio. I'm basically just using that one. And then I have my sock project that I've got in my car, which has actually been getting some work on it. So I will show you sock projects as I finish them, just because they're really not at the top of my priority list right now. I'm just working on them as I have time. But I did cast on a couple of other things, so I'm going to show you those items. The first one is also out of the new yarn, the Ridgetop. Except this is the fingering weight version, and it is a mitt. One of the main reasons I wanted to have this yarn in my lineup was for color work. I wanted a non-superwash for color work purposes. This looks huge, and quite honestly, it probably is a little bit bigger than it needs to be, but it's not overly big. Like, my arm is not swimming in it. This is the Antidote mitt pattern by OOAK. It was from the Shetland Wool Week 2018 book, which you may have seen. I love these books. I think this may be the first pattern I've ever knit out of one of them, but I really enjoy having these. It's from Shetland Wool Week, obviously. So let me see if I can find. Here's a picture of the mitts in there. There's like 3 different versions. You can either do the mitts, you can do the mitts with these little flaps that you can flap over, or you can do full-on mittens. I'm just doing the fingerless mitts without the flap. Anyway, I am using, I think it's 5 different colors of this yarn. I can't tell you colorway names yet because I have not settled on colorway names for all of them, but I really like how they are knitting up, and the yarn is knitting up like a dream. It's working so well for color work, and it's just so squishy. I'm going to be talking more about the yarn in the shop section because I am going to have an update with it this coming week. But yeah, so this is that project. I don't really have a lot to say about it yet because I'm not super far into the actual mitt part, but the cuff was a lot of fun to do. I love that checkerboard kind of pattern. It was super fun. So I will tell you more about that as I progress through those. The other thing, ironically, finish a sweater, you get to start a new one, right? Yes. The answer to that is yes. So I have started a sweater, and it will be a pullover. This is not going to be a cardigan. The pattern that I'm actually following for the sweater is, let me see, do I have it in here? Yes, I do. I don't think I printed out the... Okay, well this page doesn't have a whole lot. It's called the Ladies Classic Raglan Pullover, and it's a Jane Richmond pattern. So it is just a pretty basic pullover pattern, which is what I wanted. What I'm doing with this, though, is I'm doing basically a fade. So I'm doing it out of worsted weight, which is why I'm not using the So Faded pattern, because So Faded is written for fingered weight. And I didn't want to do the math. So instead I'm using this pattern, and I'm just doing it as a fade. The colors are the yarn I'm using is my Fibernymph Dye Works Cozy base, which is my superwash worsted base. I don't tend to like doing sweaters out of the superwash anymore just because I don't feel like they hold up as well. I don't feel like they hold their shape as well. But I had, as I've talked about, at the end of dye days, I'll kind of just throw excess dye on skeins and have one-of-a-kind skeins. I ended up with a bunch of one-of-a-kind skeins over the course of the last month or so that really made a nice palette. And I thought, oh, these would work really well together. And then I ended up with this skein that honestly tied them together really well. So this is what I'm doing. This is a skein of Merlot, my Merlot colorway. So this is my first color. The next color that I'll fade into will be this variegated color with all these colors in it. This is one of the skeins I think I did using colors from my Dyer's Favorites 2018 dyes. It'll fade into this, and then the next color that it's going to go into is this, which is mostly dark brown, but it's not completely the dark brown color. It's not dark brown. It looks dark brown, but it's not. That'll be the next color, and then I have a succession of other kind of taupey grays. I can't get them all out of here, and I cannot hold all of this. Okay. This isn't the correct order, but I have the numbers in them on those little blue pieces of paper. The order I'm going to do them in. Anyway, so they're going to go, like those will be next. So the top of the sweater is going to be super dark, and then it's going to fade down into this real gradual fade in those lighter colors. I think it's going to turn out really well. Now, I can't say that I would ever be totally inclined to do a sweater where the top is dark and the bottom is light. I would normally want to do that the other way around, but I really want the purple up by my face and that dark variegated up through here. Well, it's not really a dark variegated, but the variegated up in the top part. So I think it's going to look cool. At least I'm going with it right now. I've gotten to the part in the pattern where I've done the whole upper neck part, upper back part, and then you join in the round so it'll sit higher, in the back without doing short rows. I really liked how it was constructed. And I've never knit a Jane Richmond pattern before. So I don't know if she does this on all of her patterns, but this is done in a fill-in-the-blank kind of way. So you've got the directions, which I'm not going to show you, but then every place where you would have cast on this many stitches, it's just a line, and you fill in the stitches that you're going to cast on based on the size you're making. And then she's got two different charts in here. One is the pattern chart, which has all the different numbers that you need for making the sweater based on your size, so you follow and you put those in the spots that they need to go in. It's amazing. I think that is the most innovative way to do a pattern. I've never seen a pattern written this way, and I love it. And then she's also got the finished measurements and yarn requirements chart and everything like that too, which most patterns have that, and a schematic. It's just the pattern's done so, I'm not saying it's a simple, easy pattern. I mean, it's not a difficult pattern, but like this is it. This is one page of directions. The whole pattern is this one page. You've put in your numbers, and it's just so easy to follow. I think this is a wonderful way to write a pattern. Now, obviously, it's also a very classic, simple design. There's not a lot of, anything going on like cables or lace. Obviously, I think that would be much more different and difficult, but for this kind of sweater, perfect. It's just like the perfect plug-in recipe, and I'm super excited, and I'm enjoying working on it. We'll see how long it takes me to finish it, because I really want to see it finished. So maybe I'll actually get 2 sweaters finished this winter. Wouldn't that be exciting? I think it would be. Anyway, I don't have anything else to show you as first projects because I've spent all my time on all those things. I do have one on deck item, and that is I'm trying to think about what I want to do for Slay the Stash in February. I did end up reorganizing my yarn cubbies. I talked about that last time. I was going to try to do a tour of of my stash and the yarn cubbies and all that, but the lighting has been horrible this week. And I did try one day and it just looked terrible, because if I have the overhead light on, everything looks yellow. If I don't have that light on and it's not bright enough outside, everything is just gray and it's hard to see. So I'm sorry, I just haven't been able to do that. But I did reorganize. I pulled out about 2 plastic bins worth of yarn that I have put away for now. They're not in my cubbies anymore. They're not distracting me. The stuff that I've left out has been stuff that I left out specifically because I think the colors are very inspiring and I do have project ideas for them eventually. But I did pick one cubby that I put a whole bunch of just single skeins in that I would like to use for Slay the Stash this year. If you're not familiar with Slay the Stash, it's a program that Jen from Down Cellar Studio podcast does, where you declare a skein of yarn at the beginning of each month. I think you have to do it within the first week, and then you have to knit it up to within, I think, 3 yards. You can't have any more than 3 yards left over by the end of the month. And then you're like entered for a prize drawing. I'm not doing it for the prize drawings so much as I just want to use up this yarn. So I put in, like, I know I have more than the year's worth of skeins in there, but a lot of them are ones that I've had in my stash for years and years and years, and I'd really like to use up. So I think for February, I'm going to pull out a worsted weight skein and decide to do something with it. I'm trying to think what to do, because my goal for these projects, these Slay the Stash projects, since you do have to use the entire skein pretty much, and you're allowed to do like a main project, and then if you have more than the 3 yards, you can use the rest in something else. You're allowed to do that, but I don't really want to have to. I would like to be able to use my whole skein in a single project, so that's why that cowl that I did this month was perfect, because I just did it until I was to the end, and then I bound it off, done, hardly had any yarn left over. I don't want to make a whole year's worth of cowls, though, even though I could use them as gifts, I'm sure. So I'm wondering, do you guys have any thoughts? Do you have any favorite projects that use up an entire skein of just worsted weight? Just one skein, so we're talking like, you know, between 200 and 250 yards probably. I think most of mine are right around the 220-ish, 230 yards. I love scarves and shawls that do that, like, you know, like that hitchhiker shape where you start small and then you increase and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and when you're done, you're done. I love those. I love patterns where you work halfway and you keep weighing, and then once you get to the halfway point, you start working back. Those are great, and I have several that I've made over the years. I don't necessarily want to do the same ones I've already done. I have been looking in Ravelry at patterns, but then I just thought I would throw it out there. If you guys have any favorite projects that you've done that would use a full skein like that without leftovers, I'd love to know what they are. So feel free to share them in the comments or in the episode thread. As far as my other crafty endeavors, I told you I've been, you know, wanting to do other things as opposed to just, you know, the fiber arts. And I'm still playing with my watercolor pens. I'm really enjoying those. And, you know, I didn't have any major ideas for what I wanted to do with them, but I'm really having fun just playing with them and blending and doing different color blends. So I've been doing kind of stuff like this, where I've basically been choosing like rainbow representative colors and like kind of blending them into each other, and then, you know, doing that. So that was like a traditional rainbow kind of color, and then this was more of a pastel. So it's just sort of a study in the colors really and how they blend together. This was a darker version. And then I kind of went off that path, and I was kind of putting together color collections. And it dawned on me as I was working through those first few pages, I thought, you know, this would be a really good way for me to play with different colors that I might want to use for colorways at some point, because, you know, these watercolor pens sort of blend together really similarly to the way yarn dye blends when the colors bleed into each other on yarn. And I just thought, well, this could be a really good way to help me develop ideas for colorways. So I did this one, and I posted it on Instagram, and people are like, will that be a new colorway? And it's like, I don't know, maybe. I really do like this color palette, the blues and the greens and the grays. And then I did another one that's sort of brighter. So yeah, I'm just having a lot of fun with it. This This is a darker one, obviously. This was actually a day. I was not having a good day this day, and that sort of represents that. So it's also kind of cathartic. But I'm having so much fun with these pens. So yeah, I mean, obviously not great works of art, but I'm having fun with it, and I think I will be able to use it as a tool as I develop new colorways. So it's a win all around. That's pretty much everything for 90%. 10%, I did finish listening to Becoming by Michelle Obama. Fabulous book. I enjoyed that book so much. She's an excellent reader of her own story, so I enjoyed that part of it. And the story itself was just so interesting, you know, from every aspect. Just, you know, these are people that were in the public eye. I mean, they're still in the public eye, but obviously not quite as much as they were when President Obama was president. But still, just, you know, knowing what was going on behind the scenes for her and for him to a degree, and their whole family, their girls. I can't recommend it enough. She is a very intelligent woman. She is very, it's just so many dynamics to her. You know, I mean, we're all dynamic people, but like things that you didn't know about, things that I didn't know about. Maybe you did, actually. But I love learning about people like that, who you've seen in the public eye for a long time, and then you learn about their lives more, and it's like, wow. It was really cool. Just very, very cool. I enjoyed that book. I've not started another audiobook yet. I think the next one might be a book by Carol Burnett, who she also reads it, and I can't remember what the title of it is now. Something with the most wonderful people or something. I don't know. I have that one downloaded already, so I may end up listening to that next, because that one should be kind of light, I think. And not the Michelle Obama book was super heavy, but I mean, there was some very heavy topics, you know, and very intense stuff in it. So I think with everything going on, I'd like a little bit of lightness in my life, so I might go for the Carol Burnett book next. We'll see. What else? As far as my life goes, I am still drinking my water this month. Again, just not quite as much, because I'd like to get some sleep, not have to run to the bathroom as much. And I am still trying to use my time wisely and not have to rush. It is a challenge sometimes, because I try to squeeze out every moment that I'm doing something, and then that pushes me later for other things. So it's challenging, but I feel like I'm making headway. So anyway, I probably won't mention those every single week. I'll probably just mention them like at the beginning of the month to let you know what they are, and then maybe at the end of the month, you know, to let you know how I feel like I did. Shop news will be next. I'm going to pause though, because I need to plug my phone in and let it charge a little bit. And then I'm going to also bring in the things that I want to show you for the update. But I will let you know that the shop update's going to be on Wednesday this coming week, which is the 23rd, I believe. Yeah, because tomorrow's the 20th, so that would be the 23rd on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. It's going to have my new non-superwash line in it, which is both DK and fingering weight. I know I said I was going to do them in their own update, but I decided I'm going to put them together with some other things just because of the timeliness. I have some Valentine's colorways that I want to get out there for you guys, since Valentine's Day isn't really all that far away. And I don't know how many more updates I'll do between now and Valentine's Day, so I want to get those out in the shop. So I will show you everything in just a few minutes. It'll be right after this for you. But anyway, if you're not hanging around for the shop the shop news part, I totally get it. I'll talk to you next time. Otherwise, hang on and I'll be right back. Hi again. Actually, on second thought, I'm going to put the shop news segment in its own video. So this will just be the regular 90%, 10% video, and then the shop news will be its own shorter video. I think that'll keep everything a little bit more manageable. So just wanted to let you know I didn't forget to put shop news in here. I just decided it would be better off elsewhere. Thanks. Bye.